I am very excited to be here today. Very glad to know so many people in this congregation. Evan's been a longtime friend of mine, and also as the director of Family Promise, it's really just an honor to be here with one of the partnering congregations in our community who serves alongside us as we serve families who are homeless in our community. As we're talking about good neighboring today, I think you guys have been working through this theme for a little while and talking about abiding in God's love and what that looks like in His agape love and how we live that out in our community. So we have a couple of texts I'm going to start out today with. Foundational text one, I believe you've been talking through in Matthew, the greatest commandment. And then we're going to move to 1 John chapter 2 as well. So as we start off in Matthew chapter 22, 36 through 40, the great commandment, as you may or may not have heard already. Someone comes up to Jesus and says, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And Jesus replies to him, and he says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And this is the great and the first commandment," says Jesus. "And the second one's just like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself." He says, "On these two things, these two commandments, all the law and the prophets, all the Old Testament, all that part of the Bible beforehand hinges on these two things, to love God and to love our neighbor." We're going to talk about that a little bit. And I think you probably already read that a little bit. And going into 1 John chapter 2, today we're going to be in verses 3 through 11 and 15 through 17 if you want to follow along. And in 1 John chapter 2, it says, "And by this we know that we have come to know Him if we keep His commandments. Whoever says, 'I know Him,' but does not keep His commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps His word, in him truly the love of God is perfected, and by this we may know that we are in Him. Whoever says that he abides in Him ought to walk in the same way in which He called us to walk. Beloved, I'm writing you no new commandment, but an old commandment that you've heard from the very, very beginning. The old commandment is the word that you have heard. At the same time, it's a new commandment that I'm writing you, which is true in Him and in you, because the darkness is passing away and the true light is already shining. Whoever says he's in the light and hates his brother, he's still in darkness. Whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness and does not know where he's going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes." And then we're going to move to verses 15 through 17, where he says, "Do not love the world or the things of this world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of life, is not from the Father, but that's in the world. And this world is passing away, along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever." So we're reading that text. I want us to start with the question, what does it mean to abide in our Father's love? And first we're going to talk a little bit about His love. It's something that we can only try and comprehend. It's something that God, when He looks down on us and created us in His image, realizes that it's so perfect, it's nothing that we'll ever be able to fully live out. It's something that's completely selfless, that's beyond us, that we do our best to try and carry out. And so we ask that question, what does it mean to abide in His love? We look there in verse 10 of chapter 2, and it says, "Whoever loves his brother abides in the light," abides in God, abides in His Spirit, in the Spirit of Jesus. And oftentimes we have a phrase so simple as, love God, love your neighbor, love God, love other people around it. It sounds very simple, very easy. Maybe sometimes in our mind, just simplistically put that down. But I think we all know that can be very difficult at times. There are people in our lives, be it a coworker, a neighbor, a family member, maybe even a friend. Sometimes it's really hard to love. That it's easy to give lip service, to do the simple things, to look like we're loving someone, to go through the motions, but are we really doing that? And that's where the challenge comes in. So I want us to think about abiding in him, and with two questions. And the first of those two questions is, do we see Jesus in the people around us? So in that person, maybe there's someone, maybe you're not like me. Maybe you've got it all figured out, and everyone's easy to love. But for that person who could be difficult to love, are we pausing and stopping and thinking, this person is made in the image of God? And it could be as simple as a coworker, a family member, or a neighbor. Or it could be someone who doesn't look like you. It could be someone who lives in a different part of the city. It could be someone who has different values than you have, than I have. And it's easy for us to dismiss other people because they're not like us. We assume that we've got it all together, and it's easy to think that that person is different, and it's harder to reach them. But in that moment, we are missing the point that we're all made in the image of God, and we're all made in his likeness, and we all have the same value in him. So as the director of Family Promise, we work with families who are homeless, and I've done nonprofit work for a long time, worked with a lot of people who are homeless, and over my years had a lot of conversations with people. The people we work with are someone who is homeless, a family member, a child with a parent. But one of the more profound conversations actually I ever had was just someone on the street asking for money. And I'm sure you've seen someone asking for money on the street before who has a sign or something saying they're homeless. And having a conversation, this one gentleman years ago, and asking, what does it mean? Like if someone gives you the $5, or what does it mean if they don't give you anything? And he said, it's great. Not everyone's going to give me money, and I've also heard some very honest answers. Sometimes people say I don't use it for the things that I should. I know I should use it to pay rent or to get food, but I've had some really honest conversations. But one of the most profound things I've ever heard was from a man who was homeless, and he said, what really hurts, though? It's not when someone doesn't give me any money. It's when they don't look at me in the eyes. They think that I'm below them. They don't want to look at me. Either they're scared, they think that I'm scary, and it makes me feel like I'm a dog or a piece of trash. And so I think that lack of connection sometimes, and I just thought in that moment I was struck and thinking, how many times do I see someone coming and I don't want to deal with it, so I'll just look straight ahead, or I'll look over here, or do something on my phone to distract myself, right? And we've all done that. But sometimes I'll give someone a bottle of water, sometimes I'll give them money, sometimes I don't, but I do my very best now to always look that person in the eyes and give them the dignity of noticing them and saying, I see you. You and I, we're the same. You and I were made in his image. We might be in a different circumstance in this moment, but engaging in that difficult, just simple eyesight to see somebody and to see them in that moment of pain. It's awkward, right? In a situation, have you ever been in a situation with somebody who is going through something hard and you don't know what to say, and it's easy to be adverse about that conversation, be it grieving a death or something that they're going through challenging, and you don't want to engage in that conversation. But when we sit there and look at someone in the eyes and wait and listen and also engage with them and allow an honest opportunity to be transparent, I think we have the life-changing opportunity to love someone in a way that's different from just a transaction of handing out money or just saying, how's it going, giving the pat answer. So our first thing is, how do we see people? Do we see Jesus in the people around us? And secondly, the next question is, how do we treat people? Do we treat them in that same manner? So first step is notice that they're made in the image of God. And then the second, to ask the question, how can I truly engage? And sure, are there times when, previous service saw supporting organizations or doing backpack buddies and Project Apple Tree. Those things are really important and really needed. And there are times when an organization just needs some money to help get some school supplies to kids, and that really helps those families and those kids. But other times, we have opportunities to go deeper with someone. And I think in those moments when we flee from those, we're missing the opportunity to love someone the way that Jesus calls us to love them. When I look through the Bible, I read the stories of Jesus, I see him with the woman at the well. I see him with people with leprosy, engaging. He's pausing. I mean, you think of how busy Jesus was. He had crowds following him all the time. He's pausing and to look someone in the eye and allow them to tell their story, which in our work, I like to call our listening to someone to be a very holy act, to give that opportunity to do holy listening, to allow someone to tell their story and understand the trauma that they're coming from, whether it's loss of a job, whether it's physical abuse or some other type of abuse, whether it's environmental, people who are black and brown skin treated differently than white people, women who are treated differently from men in the workplace. These are the kind of things that we hear regularly with people who are homeless. It's never just someone made one bad decision. It's always a whole lot of things environmentally who have changed someone's life that have helped cause them to become homeless. So when we can engage with someone, it doesn't have to be someone who's homeless on the street. It could be the mother who's 2 houses down, and you can tell she's struggling. Your coworker that you work with, and you can tell something is off. And maybe the first time you ask, is everything okay? They shrug it off and say it's no big deal. But maybe after just the opportunity to being present, and again, allowing someone to talk and listen and tell their story, that freeing opportunity to be transparent and say, yeah, I've got a family member struggling with drugs or alcohol, or there's an abusive situation, or I'm about to lose my job. I don't know how we're going to make ends meet. You have this opportunity to listen. And it's hard, right? Because it's easy just to give the right answers and walk off. But it's hard to sit and engage and to sit in those awkward moments. But that, I think, is where we have the real opportunity to love people the way that Jesus has called us. And when we're seeing people the way Jesus sees them, seeing Jesus in every single person and treating them that way and getting into a relationship, I think that's where we really are beginning to have the opportunity to abide in his love and to love our fellow man the same way. So I'm the director at this organization called Family Promise of East Bell County. Really humbled to be a part of this organization because it's just profoundly changed my life. I started volunteering. Some of you may have volunteered here in this church, and we partner with congregations. I started 10, 12 years ago volunteering, and my wife and I would stay overnight. We'd prepare meals, and we got to know these moms and dads and children who are experiencing homelessness and to hear their stories. And it really just changed and shaped us. And so our mission is to empower families experiencing homelessness to achieve sustainable independence through a community-based response. So that sounds like a big mission statement, and it is. And so what that means is we partner with congregations in the community. And historically, what we've done is have 13 congregations in East Bell County, Salado, Rucker Heights, Temple, Belton, and the families would stay in the churches right here. I think maybe, I don't know if in this room, but certainly in this building. And then volunteers would sign up to stay overnight with families, providing meals, hanging out with kids, doing puzzles, playing games, reading books, and then in the morning, taking them back to our day center. So I think we might have some pictures coming up. And as you see these pictures, these are real faces of people in our community, just very recently with their kids who have been homeless and have recently achieved sustainable independence, no longer homeless. And so we partner with churches to do volunteer work. And what you all do as volunteers is share the love of God. And as staff members, as social workers, we do a lot of accountability, making sure that someone who comes in, we do a covenant of work. So if someone's homeless with at least one child, we work with them for 90 days, helping them mitigate transportation, working through past traumas, on budgeting, making sure they have a sustainable plan for finances when they graduate out of our program, ensuring that everyone has jobs, and then also, of course, sustainable housing for a minimum of 1 year, if not forever. So with that, in our core program, we have about a 94% success rate of families who come to us who graduate out into their own housing. And of those families who graduate out into their own housing, we have a 100% success rate. They stay housed in our community. They keep their jobs, their kids are in school, and a lot of that is because of the relational aspect that we have from you all, from this congregation and churches all over East Bell County. We work with them. It's easy just to give someone a needed, physical asset, be it cash or help them get a job quickly, but to sit with them, to listen, to walk with them. And, as we all know, relationships are messy. There are times when things don't go according to plan, but to be there and realize, okay, this didn't work out. What happened here? How can we move forward so that the next time this doesn't happen again? And so in that moment, we're supporting them, walking with them, just like you would with a family member, a child, a spouse, a parent, and never, never giving up in the same way that God never gives up on us. So those volunteer opportunities that you all and my wife and I have done with the families in the program, we're going in with this mindset, typically, that we're going to help someone, but oftentimes we're the ones getting a whole lot out of it. But at the same time, and we get so much out of it because we start to understand the situations. We start to understand the difficulties. Just transportation alone that causes someone to become homeless, the amount of abusive situations that causes people to become homeless, it's just staggering, honestly. But when we sit down and learn from them, we realize how different our perspective was, and we adjust and understand the situation a lot better. In the moment, we're working with the families, too, you have the opportunity to just give the moms and dad respite. I've got a wife, I have a job, she has a job, we have 2 kids who are 4th and 5th graders, and even with all the support, and we're not homeless, we both have cars, in the evenings at 5, 6 o'clock, I get really frustrated. And maybe I'm the only parent who gets frustrated with my kids around dinner time when they're really, really hungry. But think about if you're a single mom and you're working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, you're struggling with transportation, you're living in a homeless shelter, and you've got kids screaming at you. The amount of stress is just through the roof, and I can't imagine how difficult it is. So when we have volunteers who come in and work with the families, it really provides a respite, and it allows that family stress to be reduced, and they come together a lot stronger. So the volunteering aspect is really important. And then for the families, just that initial impact that you're no longer sleeping in a car, you're no longer dealing with the heat, you're no longer worrying about being stung by an ant at 2 a.m. if you're sleeping outside. And maybe even worse, if you're couch surfing, as we call it, sleeping on the couch of somebody else who's homeless, who has a house, you're probably wondering, what kind of person is here? What kind of risk am I putting my children in if I step out for 5 minutes, if I step out for an hour? So when they come into the program, they have a lot more safety and security. And so we're working with them relationally, making sure that they're sustainable. And then at the graduation point where they move out into the community, we wrap our arms around them and we follow up with them for the next year, and to where they're continuing to succeed. And that life-changing moment of in our program with volunteers serve and then staff doing casework with them changes them. And that's why we have people who are no longer homeless after that. And it changes their lives for years and years to come because we focus on the relationship with people. So, is everyone called to work with kids and moms and dads who are homeless? Absolutely not. Should we take every opportunity to serve someone who's homeless? Definitely. But there are other opportunities as well to love someone. And again, I come back to this thought about people who come into our lives, whether it's your students, whether it's your patients, your coworker, your neighbor, understanding that there are going to be crises. We all come into crises regularly, and to not step away from that, to not shy away from the difficult moments, catching those glimpses in someone's eyes and realizing there's something off here, sitting in that moment and to listen and wait for that person to talk. And maybe, again, not in that moment, but to see in their eyes and look at them and say, I see Jesus in you, and I'm willing to be here with you, and I'm willing to love you. I don't know what that looks like. and it can be scary. I don't know where this path is going to take us, but I'm going to sit with you and walk with you for the next month or 3 years or however long it takes, and to be that person, because that's what Jesus did, and that's what he calls us to do. There's a parable in the Gospels in Matthew chapter 21 that I love to use. I think about this nearly every single day of my life. Of all the parables, this one maybe sticks out the most. A parable called of the two sons. So in chapter 21, verses 28 through 31, Jesus says, "What do you think? A man has two sons, and he went to the first one and he said, 'Son, go work in my vineyard today.' And the first son answered, 'I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit here and play video games. I don't want to do your work.' But then later he changes his mind, and he goes and works in the vineyard, right? And then the second son he goes to and he says, 'Hey, go work in my vineyard.' And the second son says, 'Sure, I'll go and do that.' But then he winds up not working for him. So the question is asked, which one is righteous? Which one did the will of the Father? And of course they said the first. And so I think that our actions speak so much louder than our words. So it's easy to say the right things. It's easy to tweet the right answers. It's easy to do the simple acts, to say the right things in a quick moment, but then to run away from the harder conversation. It's easy to give $5 than it is to sit and to know someone who is struggling. And I think that that's where we are called to be, is to understand there are easy options with people in our lives that God has put us there, that we can look really good on paper, and we can tell the world, I love God and I love people. But that spills out, and our neighbors who are not here today at church, the unchurched, who we can say, I'm a Christian, I love God, I love my neighbor, but they see our actions, and they're going to question, well, I don't see you going as far. I don't see you going that second mile like Jesus called us to. And so the question for us to leave today is, who are we going to be? Who are we? Are we a people who are simply satisfied with easy answers, with simple acts? Or are we willing to be a people who abide in the Spirit of God, who are willing to sit with someone in the difficult moment, who don't walk away? Can we sit down with someone and to hear their story, to sit in their pain, and to look in their eyes and let them look in ours and tell them we love them, and to sit with them and walk with them through that time? I think that's the people we are called to be, and that is who the world wants. That's who the world wants us to see, is a people of faith who are willing to do the hard work when it's easier to just give the right answer. So, let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for your love. We thank you so much for creating us in your beauty. We thank you for creating us in your image and calling us to love you. And we love you by loving others in our lives. It's no easy task to be your disciple. It's easy to say the right things, but it's difficult to live them out. And we ask for courage. We ask for humility, that we don't assume that we know all the answers. And we ask for strength in those times when it's difficult to do those things, that we all know that there's someone right now we can each think of who's struggling, that we've run away from. We don't want to deal with them because it's uncomfortable and it's awkward, and maybe we don't know the answers. Help us to be okay with knowing that we don't know the answers, but that your Spirit will come in to that relationship and help us just to be a friend, that we would be just like you in the way you treated people, and we would love them holistically, and to see your gospel wrap around them. We thank you so much for your love and praise your name. Amen.